Hi, welcome to another edition of Warehouse 34. And my name is Diane Morton-Gattullo, and I am your host for season 2. I want to share, everybody knows him, but I want to share a dear friend, AlLambert, who is probably one of the sweetest guys. Everybody adores Al.
Very nice.
And if you don't like Al, there's something wrong with you. Just putting that out there. But Al is the reason why I'm at CTV. Al, thanks for joining me on my first episode of season 2.
Absolutely welcome. Glad to be here.
Thank you, thank you. You brought me here.
I remember, like they say, yes, I remember it well.
I mean, you have a great show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And the name of your show is The AlLambert Show.
Makes sense in my world.
Yes, it
the
does.
The AlLambert Orchestra, The AlLambert Show, The AlLambert Cadillac. It was all
AlLambert world. We're all just living in the AlLambert world. The show, how long has your show been running it on CTV?
I'm going to go for 10 or 11 years, I think. But my dad had 10, 11 years I was with him.
So you are the second generation.
Second generation of Lamberts, yeah.
And your dad's name and his show, for those who may not know it?
Dom Lambert Show. There's some still in the archives, you know. I even brought Jill Corey from the original television show. It was called The Hit Parade, Channel 4. She was with Snooki Lanson and Giselle McKenzie, and they were big stars in the 50s. And Jill and I, she actually dated Sinatra. They were almost engaged. And she told me a great story about her and Frank. And she's mentioned in almost every book about Sinatra.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she was very good friends with Judy. And she had her first hit was I Bless the Day I Found You. She did it before the Everly Brothers. That was her first hit. Ah. And anyway, I had her on the show. And of course, Vito came on the show. I had a lot of people in show business that were, pretty cool, that did their thing.
You brought Vito here before
my dad kind of did, because on the down.
We're talking about Vito Picone.
Vito Picone. Vito is like when you talk about Elvis in Vegas. On Staten Island, you say Vito, everybody knows. Yeah. But I said to my father, I think we'll ask Vito, and Vito did come, and he didn't realize it was a studio at that time, and he said, gee, this was great. And of course, they asked him right away, and him and Ed got together. I remember they had a show together, and then they wound up doing their own separate shows.
So now, Vito used to live in the same development I live in, and when we first moved there and we became members of the pool.
I thought that was a gambling thing.
No.
Oh, you mean the pool?
Yeah, the pool. Right. We have the largest private pool of Staten Island in our development. And I don't know, somebody saw me saying hello to Vito. So every day that I would go to the pool, these women would come over and they're like, so, do you know Vito? And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, what are we talking about here? And they try to befriend me just to get to him.
To get to Vito?
Oh, my God. And every time I used to see Vito's brother more than Vito.
Oh, Frankie, yeah.
And I would turn around and tell them, your brother, like, listen, if I could get, like, free meals out of this, I would be, large and in charge over here. I say, every single person in the development comes out, and these women, no matter if they're, like, 50, 15, 50, 25, right. 75, right. They're all swinging their hair going, hi. Do you know Vito? I'm like, oh my God. And he's the sweetest guy in the world.
He's the greatest guy.
But it's almost like collectively, every female on Staten Island was in love with Vito at one point in their life.
Listen, the guy made it.
Or still are in love with it,
He was 16
like it's crazy.
years old when that recording came out. A young guy, and he always tells the story about, in about a year and a half, he said they blew all the money because they didn't know they were young, Later on, they got smart, of course. But Vito had he's in the Hall of Fame in Cincinnati, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's a room there with several people in the category, and Vito's in there.
I think that's great.
And you press the button, and he sings, And I'm one of the few people that know, because I went there. A lot of people don't go there.
Right.
In fact, there was such a controversy of having it there. There wasn't enough population in around Cincinnati.
But maybe they were hoping it would become a destination.
Well, and it did. It kind of became a destination. But it's still, if it was in Chicago, New York, L.A., like when you go to Nashville, the country music stuff is in Nashville,
Right.
So anyway.
I don't know. I mean, I know that I love Vito. My whole family loves Vito.
Yeah, he's the coolest guy.
But I got to tell you, it was the wildest thing the first season at the pool.
That made it.
I'm like, Do you know Vito? Do you know Vito? Oh.
Well, he could have made it as a comedian, Vito. He
Yeah.
is so funny. And I tell him that all the time. We can't get on the phone together for 20, 25 minutes, and I just die laughing.
Well, he could have made it in a couple of different careers.
Yeah.
I mean, he's very believable as a street guy in the movies. You know,
absolutely.
If you didn't know who he was,
Right.
you would definitely take it.
He got it all.
Yeah.
He got it all.
Yeah.
And he did it all.
He can cover all the bases.
Hey, look, I'm going to be 60 years in the business. Vito's probably going to be 65 years in the business. So I can't stand when people say, well, I shouldn't say I can't stand. Let me roll the clock back. When people say to me, and they don't know, I never know whether it's a compliment or not, they'll go, how come you didn't make it? And some people mean that as a compliment.
Right.
They kind of feel that maybe, whatever, they like my voice, they know that I've had a long career. And depending on who it is, I say, well, that word that's the key here. If it means celebrity beyond recall, 25 million hits on a TikTok thing, I didn't make, but I did it. There is an it that I did, and I did the life for 60 years. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people who, they make one hit record, you'll never see them again.
Right.
So I did not have that luxury. But the blessing I had was working with some of the biggest people in the business. So that's how I got the blessing, being able to work with Vic Damone, Chuck Mangione. Mm-hmm. I worked with all these people, all the oldies groups. I worked with almost every one, and I'm not an oldie group, but they met me, heard me, go, come on Al, you do the show anyway. I'd say, I'm not an oldies group, do what you do.
What is your favorite genre to perform?
It's interesting. That's a good question. My favorite genre to perform, okay. I felt like we're at a pageant, It's world peace, actually. No, I'm only kidding. My favorite genre is both the pop genre, which my world encompasses doing, some Sinatra, some Eagles, all pop, but you got top 40 of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Okay.
I like the top 40 of those years. Years ago, you didn't have, today you have segment top 40 country western, top 40.
Right. Everything's really broken down.
Everything was all top 40 when it started. So I was one of the first bands to do that. The bands were playing Besame Mucho when I came, and they were playing the songs from the 40s. When I came on the scene, we started doing all the rock and roll at all the events, and that's how my band got so popular for 30 years, did almost 2,800 weddings, and
how many divorce parties did you do?
I did several. I caused a few. Just kidding. Scratch that, please.
I'm joking. But that's a big thing now, actually. People have divorce parties.
They do, I know.
Yeah.
Well,
so if you were lucky enough to be the one, playing for their wedding, listen, call the AlLambert band if you're getting divorced. Throw your party with AlLambert band.
But the funny thing, in my 60 years, it's always about reinventing yourself.
Yes.
And I may have gotten 20 years out of one name, another 15 years out of another, but it was always around the word Lambert. Right. But with AlLambert and the corporation, AlLambert and the new corporation, the AlLambert Orchestra, those kinds of things.
Right.
So it was always about reinventing yourself that I had to dream of how I'm going to do. Now I don't know what the hell to do, because at 110, you just better just do it, and that's it,
You, at one point, had someone join the AlLambert Orchestra who is beautiful and talented and related to us, and I think it was such a blessing that I saw this beautiful woman get up on the stage with you and sing, and it's been a love affair ever since.
Yes, it's true. Well, Lenore and I actually met when I had my chorus. I had a chorus of 65 singers for 10 years, and Lenore was in that chorus. And that's how we actually met. I knew her family for many years, but that's how we met. And then after, when we did meet and eventually got married, we were married about a year. She says, "Can I sing with your band?" And I said, duh. She goes, "You have to think about that?" I said, "Well, I was so used to you never having my wife in the band."
Right.
So 48 hours later, as she was packing my bags.
I was going to say, as you were already sleeping in a garage,
As she was packing, I said, okay. And we worked on that. But the funny thing was, years ago I used to rehearse a lot. You had to do that when you were starting. But as we grew, and all the musicians that I happened to use, top-notch people, I'd love to make a story about each one of them. But they play anything in every key. And we do a rock and roll song. We just do the song. We all know the parts, and they know. It's astounding. So Lenore says, when do you rehearse? When she came, I said, we don't rehearse. She said, what do you mean you don't rehearse? I said, we don't.
Been doing it together forever.
Forever. And at the end of a gig, sometimes we'll do 3 or 4 songs that we all thought we should do. And we put the song out there. And by the second time we do the song, we got the song.
Right.
She said, well, how am I going to learn? I said, you'll be surprised. So I said, you just get on the bandstand. When you hear harmonies, sing the harmony. When you don't hear the harmony, don't sing the harmony, because that'll throw everybody off.
Right.
And she started to do that, and eventually she got all the parts. She's a great harmony ear, and got all the parts. And then I said, then I'll start doing the solo stuff. And that's how we did it.
She's extremely talented.
She is. Well, her ear is, she's got an incredible ear. And she doesn't look bad on the bandstand, which helps in the music business.
She's a hottie, Lenore. You have a hottie for a wife.
Well, they say she's younger than you. What do you talk about? In the car, I said, I don't talk. I bring crayons.
I think the best is when you were getting married and we were shopping for the bridal shower. Mm-hmm. And Madison at that time was really, really young.
Madison.
And, you know, our whole family adores you, but Madison has always loved you, but she was a little girl.
Yeah,
and she used to call you Mr. Al.
I know. That was so cute. Yeah.
So
I wish she'd do that now.
So we went to Bed Bath & Beyond. I'll never forget it. And on the list were pillows. So I'm looking at the pillows, and Madison turned to me and she said, Mom, I don't understand this. Miss Lenore is not going to share a pillow with Mr. Al. And I said, well, we're going to buy 2 pillows. Oh, we will buy 2 pillows. And when we went to the shower, Madison was invited. So we walk in with the bags, and she goes over to Lenore, and she goes, Miss Lenore, I love you. Here's your pillow. And Lenore goes, oh, thank you so much, Madison. That's so sweet. And she goes, and this is Mr. Al's. You have to keep them separate. And she's looking at me. I go, I don't know.
I never heard that.
She put the 2 shopping bags. They couldn't even match. We couldn't have 2 bags, you know, the gift bags, the same. They had to be 2 separate,
that
like
is so
one is
cute.
for you and one is for you. She could not make that connection that the 2 of you would share a pillow together. Like what was going to change?
Right, what was going to change, yeah.
In this relationship, you know?
She was articulate at 5 years old. You know, she was just amazing. And her first time singing really was with us at Tugs, right? Am I right? Yeah.
Yes.
And I said, bring her down. And
but she sang in school, but she never sang in front of strangers.
In front of strangers with a band, you know, and walking up cold.
Yes.
Which is how I taught my kids. They used to get mad, my kids. We don't rehearse. You just listen. Yep. You'll know when to come in. You'll hear the chord, you know. And that's how I trained my kids. Is working that way. Right. In school, they had the arrangements and all, but when they came with me, I taught them that because I wanted them to be able to get up and sing, spur of the moment, and understand what's happening. Use your ears, and your ears tell your brain this is the time to do it.
When you practice and you think, especially at that age, you become fearful.
Yeah.
So when you just go off the cuff,
it works.
The fear factor is never there.
Never there.
And when you're surrounded by people who are looking at you like you're just the sweetest little thing, you know, she was a little girl. She felt so much love. There was no fear.
There was no fear. I couldn't wait. Was it O Tannenbaum? What did we sing? She sang.
She wanted you. You started singing with her, and
Oh Christmas Tree.
And she said, "Do you know it in German?"
Yes, it was Oh Christmas Tree. Yeah.
And because my father-in-law taught her the song in German.
Oh Tannenbaum.
And you looked at it and you went, "What?" And she said, I'll show you. And she started singing in German up there, and everybody went.
I know.
She was like 5 at Tugs.
Yeah, they had that stage. Mm-hmm. You know Teresa Figiani? Well, Teresa started out coming to sing, playing drums in my band, not in the band.
Right.
But her dad was my friend, and he told me they had the Tuminello's Market. Her mom was a Tuminello, and Sonny had the butcher shop next door. And when I knew the family, he said, "You know, my daughter plays drums." I said, "Really?" He said, "I'd love to have her play with you." I said, "Well, bring her down some night." Because in those days, if I did 3 or 4 weddings a weekend, I would do during the week and on Sunday rock and roll clubs, the Wagon Wheel, the Penthouse in Brooklyn, all these places. The Penthouse I actually did Saturday and Friday and Saturday.
You mean the original Pastels, Penthouse on 88th?
Yeah. I worked there for years. My dad was friends with Sonny. Sonny was one of the managers.
Yeah.
And Sonny was a liquor salesman with my dad. Anyway, long story short.
You did the top of the Crescent, too.
Did he?
You did. The top of the Crescent.
I could have.
It was an ice house.
That? Yeah. Okay. I forgot where.
Yeah, in Bay Ridge, literally around the corner.
Yeah. See, sometimes you know, I remember certain gigs, and anyway, so Sonny brings Teresa down, and I was at the 4 o'clock lounge. We used to work there from 10 at night till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then stay there till 4:10. You know. So Sonny comes out. I said, bring her in at 11:30. The place will be jammed. You know. So Sonny would come in with 15 people, the grandmothers and everybody. And Teresa was that big, and I'd say, I got a special treat for you. And I would bring Teresa up to play a couple of songs with the band. The place would go crazy. Everybody had such respect for it because they saw this little girl coming up there and playing drums. And then Sonny could say, I gave him my whole list. You bring it down every night if you want. And that's the truth. So she probably sat in with us about 10 or 15 times over the years.
Before ACS was a big thing.
There you go. There you go.
Keeping her out past 8 o'clock at night.
And fun. And she always says that. She, you know, we'll always talk. And she says, you know.
For some reason, you have this thing where you are genuinely kind to children, and I think it falls back on the way you were raised.
That's number one.
And B, also what you did for professionally at Willowbrook.
Yeah, well, that was the most amazing time of my life. You know, I was there for 6 years, and working there. The first 3 or 4 days, they give you orientation, and they would have 400 people there, and you had to go to orientation. By the third day of orientation, only 60 people were left. Wow. Because they used to bring in some of the patients that did not look the way you could handle life. Right. And the 60 of us, let's say I happened to be in the 60 when I did it, and others were eventually selected to work in the Willowbrook pool because it meant that you could get through the orientation. Mm-hmm. And after I was doing, am I taking up good enough time here? All right.
I keep talking. This is what I want.
What happened was
everybody knows the AlLambert from
Cars and the band.
So I want to share it with everybody. The other AlLambert that I love, know, and respect. So go to town.
So what happened was I had graduated Wagner. I had a sociology degree. The service in lieu of Vietnam was raging, and my friend says, you know, if you want to do service in lieu of, if you teach at Willowbrook, because they need people at Willowbrook, you get a service in lieu of. Instead of going in the Army, you're needed in America.
Whoa, so, I never knew.
Yeah, so I went there and I got a 2A instead of a 1A for teaching at Willowbrook. It was considered equivalent to being in the Army, Navy, Air Force. Oh. So I'm there, and I was in a class. I had no ed credits. I just had a sociology degree. And I was teaching in a classroom, and believe me, the things I saw in that classroom, you know, good and bad, some amazingly good things and some amazingly bad things. So we have a first Christmas party. I'm at the Tavern on the Green. The principal's there. Everybody's there. 200 teachers, you know. So we all go in the bar at the end of the night, about 50 or 60 of us all in the bar, everybody's drinking. So they go, come on, Lambert, sing, you know. So I stand up on a bar stool. Now I'm feeling no pain. And I sing
I have no idea what that must mean. Yeah. I have no, it's foreign world today.
2 sheets to the wind.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, being up on a bar.
I know. Well, that's how I worked at the 4 o'clock lounge. It was always on the bar. Anyway, so I go to, I sing a couple of songs, and the principal's stern. I loved her, but she was stern. She says, come here, you. I said, oh, Christ, I'm fired now. She says, do you want to be a music teacher? I said, yeah, I guess. I said, I don't have any music credit. She said, I didn't ask you that. Do you want to be a music teacher? I said, yes. 4 days later, I get a schedule where I go into every building at Willowbrook. It was called a school, even though it was more of not a school. Right. Every building had to have a classroom. I
didn't live here at the time. Okay. I was from Brooklyn, so I don't know as much as
6,000
more
patients,
Staten Islanders do.
6,000 employees. It was a city. So I started going to every building teaching music. And I noticed after 6 months that there were kids who had perfect or relative pitch, who blind, they were in carts, they were walking in wheelchairs, but they were. So I said to her, would you mind if I want to do a glee club or chorus? She says, what? The principal. I said, I really think I could put 50, 60 voices together. What do you need? I need a piano player, and I need 2 months to audition every kid in the school, 800 kids. Oof. She goes, you got it. So I put 50 kids together after 2 months, and I put them in a room. Each chair was separate because they would pick at each other. I did it like checkers.
Yeah.
And I had a low voice, high voice, not too confusing. So I had like a lower voice range and a higher voice range. And I teach them a song. I had 10, 15 teachers in the room, the assistant principal, the principal. And I teach them a line for the song, and they sounded like the Norman Luboff Choir.
Wow.
It was a sound. It wasn't a sound that you would expect from some developmentally people. It was a sound that was just out of this world. So I turned everybody's crying in the room.
Right.
And then I started to cry because what was in front of me was something that I never thought would be achievable.
Right. Push
comes to shove, I started this chorus with 2 and 3 part harmony with special kids. It got so big that I took them to the city, performed for the governor, performed for the mayor, performed for everybody, and people and even Geraldo, who wouldn't come and hear the Glee Club at that time or the chorus.
He
was at his moment there. I was smack in the middle during the investigation. In all due respect, he was right to want to close it, but they had asked him to come and hear AlLambert's Glee Club chorus, and he said, no, it's more of a down report. So if you think about it, 6,000 employees, there weren't 6,000 bad employees. There were probably 4,500 terrific employees who loved the kids and worked like hell, and there could have been a group of people who caused what you saw. So P.S., one day I'm at the Hilton, 3,000 people, and I got my chorus, and I'm with Stilla and Mira, that group, the husband and wife. So they were the MCs, and I'm telling them, well, oh my God, this is amazing. So the curtain opens up, and I have a little girl, beautiful voice, singing, long ago, and oh, so far away, and the chorus in the back, and it's going, baby, all correct. Don't you remember? And so Roger Grimsby, Jim Jensen, these were all the heavyweights at Channel 2, Channel 4, and Geraldo. Now they're giving it to Geraldo. They're going, what's this? And Geraldo didn't say anything, and I finished it with a counterpoint version of Let There Be Peace, with 3 different sections singing Let There Be Peace. 3,000 people stand up screaming and yelling.
Wow.
So what happened was, if there was television today, if there was internet today, this would be the biggest thing since sliced bread. I had to leave eventually. I couldn't support a family on that money. And I went on, but the chorus wound up doing some terrific things, and then bingo, I had to leave. And after that, nobody liked it. I wrote a 26-page movie treatment, which I still have.
I remember having this conversation with you.
An Impossible Dream for 50. And I almost sold it to Warner Brothers. 6 weeks we were in communication with Warner Brothers. And it was amazing. Could you imagine, you call Warner Brothers and 4 seconds later, the producer, director gets on the phone? It would never happen. He saw it through a partner of mine, worked for Dodger Productions in New York. And that's how I got the connection. It wasn't my connection, but after that, it was him and I communicating. Right. Almost sold it for a television movie. But I keep it with me because someday, even after I die, I'll give this to my kids. I'll say, by the way, you keep this going because there's a movie in this story. And that was my Willowbrook life.
The world has changed a lot since then, and also the ability to have, screenplays picked up.
Yeah,
and treatments picked up, and the availability to the people who can make it happen has become a lot easier.
Yeah.
So you never know.
You never know. I've got it to a few real big people, and they'll give you some lip service, and
I feel like it's more of like an indie. You would need to get to an indie production company for that.
Maybe, or someone, a Spielberg who would really has a heart. I'm not saying that. I don't know the man personally, but his movies come from a center of gravity that I think.
Maybe Ken Burns.
It's has to get out there. I had an agent for a while, and then I dropped it, but I have to start rethinking it again because people who read it they can't believe that this really happened. Can I add a quick story?
Sure.
When I wanted to have a concert a year into it, and the principal, Mrs. Glasser, she said, Al, nobody comes to Willowbrook. I
Did the parents of the children?
Parents, only 1% of the parents ever visited those kids. Those kids were thrown in there and rarely visited.
Oh.
They had visitors day once a week, and you're lucky if you saw 2 or 3 visitors in each building, and the buildings had 200-300 kids.
Oh.
The percentages, the people just dropped them there. Not all, but many just dropped them there. In those days, if you had a special kid or a developmentally disabled person, you were frowned upon. The mentality in those days was horrible. I used to take them.
Cruel.
I took them to Luchow's in New York.
Very cruel.
And I had caps and gowns. She made me buy caps and gowns. I took them to Luchow's. This was 58 kids, and 22 teacher assistants would travel with me. I mean, you think about it.
Yeah.
And I had them in Luchow's. They were all eating. It was a special treat after one of the Hilton shows. And after it was over, the waiters and waitresses were taking care of them, but they didn't really get it. So I said to the kids, would you want to sing a song for the people? Luchow's was gigantic when it was on 14th Street. So the kids start singing, let there be peace on earth and let it begin. And then the echo, let it begin with me. We start this whole thing. Well, people dropped their forks. The waiters went like this. They finished Let There Be Peace in the middle of Luchow's. Everybody in the restaurant stood up.
They must have been crying too.
They were crying. They were bringing money. I said, please. They were giving me money. The waiters and waitresses were bringing the kids ice cream. They discounted the bill. The place went crazy when they heard that.
Right.
You know. Now, when I was in negotiation with Warner Brothers, the guy says to me, Al, do you have a tape? I said, it was 1969, 1971. Tape? You had a web course with the size of a house.
Right.
There was no cassettes. There was none of that.
Reel to reel.
Yeah, and you didn't bring it.
Yeah.
So I said, but I could do it again, of course, with special kids. There's many questions. So we have a luxury today, which people really, they take it for granted. You know, you can do so much right here. Boom, send it right. You didn't have that. You know.
It's funny, in the basement of my parents' home, my dad had he bought a portable, what they considered portable, reel-to-reel, and it was like a piece of luggage.
It was portable, right, because you turned it over and had a handle.
It was literally, I remember thinking this was luggage as a kid, till I opened it up, and then I found the contraption, and I played it, and the voices I heard, and the stories that I heard on it, I was like, oh my God,
I know.
you know.
You're right.
Yeah.
It was so different.
Yeah, it was from the Korean War.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah.
But, you know, then things got, of course, so much better. But anyway.
But what a remarkable career.
Yeah, well, I was very
you know.
lucky. You know, God always put me in a particular position. You know, at that time, it had me there for 6-7 years, and I was selling cars at night. You know, Toyota was down the street from Willowbrook. I
want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Cars have always been, cars and music are the two huge constants in your life.
Right.
Were you a car buff as a kid?
No,
How did you fall in love with cars?
Well, I lived next door to my uncle. We were Italian people. I was second generation. My mother was first generation, meaning her parents were born in Italy. But we all lived 125 of us lived in Mariners Harbor.
125?
Of all my relatives in
So you
in Mariners
basically
Harbor.
owned Mariners Harbor at that point?
We kind of did.
Yeah.
And everybody went to St. Michael's. Everybody went to PS 44.
I go to church there on Sundays.
Well, that's my whole family. Every wedding, I can go on and on. Hundreds of events in St. Michael's. Anyway, next door to my house, my grandma's house, my uncle Leb, Laborio was his name, but he changed it to the Louis Ferraro because who the hell wanted to spell Laborio?
Right.
He had Ferrara's garage next to my house. So you had spaghetti and grease. That's how I was raised, with cars in the yard. He had limousines, a gas station, and garages, and next door was the fig trees and the plants. So I was actually literally raised in the business. People say, I was raised in the business. You weren't raised in the business. I was raised in the business. Later on, he taught all his brothers the business. So one of the uncles with a partner opened up Staten Island Toyota, and I was in college, and nobody knew what a Toyota was. So I wound up selling cars while I was studying in college.
Wow.
And selling cars while I was at Willowbrook at night. 2:30, I would leave Willowbrook, go sell cars till 9, work on Saturday. So you had 40 hours in Willowbrook, you had 30, 5 hours there, and then 3 or 4 nights a week I'd be singing. So I worked 100 hours a week for 8 years. I did 3 jobs. That's how I bought my house when I was 25, my new Cadillac when I was 25. I did that because I worked my arse off, okay, and had three incomes, and they were good incomes.
Sure.
So the car business, after I was Willowbrook 26, 27, my uncle says, I have to get a full-time sales manager now. I had already 3 people working for me,
right.
But he said, I got to get big. What do you want to do? Your shot. Either you stay with us, you're general manager, and we grow, or you teach, and you can work here, but you can't be manager. No, we can't do it part-time. Toyota was getting big. 2 nights of no sleep, I picked Toyota.
Okay.
And that's how I got into the car business. We moved from the corner of Victory on Victory to the corner of Victory and Richmond on Richmond, and all of a sudden our business went from 30 cars a month to 200 cars a month.
Wow.
Overnight. And I had to get 13 salesmen, and all of a sudden it was big time. So I learned sink or swim, went from 30 cars a month to 200 cars a month, and it was just a whole other world. That's how I learned. I never learned from a book. I never learned.
Right.
I learned to be a general manager by being a general manager.
Right, right.
And then the rest was history. They sold it to Manfredi, then I went with Lambert for 20 some odd years. So it was
one of the times when I was really young, I remember being really lost, and I used to have a notebook, and it gave me the directions whenever I had to come to Staten Island.
Right.
To find.
That's funny.
But when I was 17, I came out here to go to the car dealerships. I had gone to a couple in Brooklyn. It was for my 18th birthday present, and I was pretty like 90% sold on a car from a dealership in Brooklyn. And I went back without my parent. It was a gift, so it was, what do you want? But it was going to be 2 cars.
Right.
It was one for me and then one for my sibling, and I was so sold on this car. So I go to the dealership, and I happen to have overalls on. And I walk in, and I didn't have my parent with me, and I wanted to test drive the car.
Prejudged you.
Well, the guy turned around to me, and he kind of, I guess, forgot, meeting my parents or whatever, and turned around to me and said, come back when you can afford it.
Wow.
So I looked at him, and I went, okay, whatever. I leave. I call my dad from the house, I said, and he goes, I don't care. And he goes, you'll never have to see the guy again. Right. If you want the car, we'll order the car. Right. I said, I'm not giving him your money. Not my money.
You were kind with that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not giving you. I'm not giving him your money, And he's like, do we have to start this process again? Because at that time, my dad didn't live in America.
Right.
So it wasn't not an easy experience, And he's like, I had it set up with the accountant. They were going to take care of everything. And I'm like, no. So I came out here, and I got lost in a couple of dealerships that I went to. The people were really rude to me as well. And I never made it out
to
that
Richmond
far.
Avenue. You went to the Boulevard.
I didn't even know what Richmond Avenue was.
Right.
Yeah. And I wound up going to.
That helped us a lot being away from the Boulevard.
I was so lost out here, but again, because I didn't really know Staten Island. Right. And I wound up going to Castleton Avenue, and I worked a deal with the
Island Chevrolet.
No, actually, the BMW dealer.
Oh, the BMW.
Yeah.
Well, they were on Castleton?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they were. Yeah. I know where they were. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah.
I believe it was like Bel Air BMW or something like that.
Yeah, it was.
They were nice guys, but they delivered the wrong color car. But whatever, I wound up having this color blue follow me for it was BMW's version of Mercedes American Gigolo Blue.
Right, right.
Which I wanted. In retrospect, they did me a favor because I wanted the taxi banana yellow BMW, because what I was going to order was I went at the Bay Ridge Porsche dealer, and that's where the guy got rude to me, and I wanted the checkerboard seats with banana yellow on the outside in this little Porsche. And everybody, all the guys that I grew up with, they were like, "Oh, that's hot," because it was a hot yellow.
Right.
A young girl in a banana yellow Porsche. I mean, really, what could go wrong?
Perfect, actually.
What could go wrong? And I wound up settling, for something else. And then I got, it was a 320i, and I got it on my 18th birthday, and it shows up at my house, and it's blue. And I'm like looking at the guy delivering the car. I'm like, that's not the car I ordered. And he's like, no, look, the paperwork says. I'm like, I did not order blue. And the second car that was, because we purchased two,
Right.
I'm like, nobody ordered blue with camel interior. That's not what I wanted.
I remember the color.
Yeah. And
I remember the interior.
Yeah, I was leaving.
Lined leather.
Yep. I was leaving a Lincoln that was navy blue with the camel interior.
Right.
I went to Visitation Academy with a navy blue uniform for 8 years. There was no way I would have ever
Right.
made a mistake with blue.
Right.
You know,
I
it was
get it.
banana yellow,
Right.
black, and
Right.
then my third choice would have been white.
Right.
And I wind up with this blue car. Somehow I had to keep the stupid blue collar car.
Well, it worked. You know, it happens. Even, you know, I never did that. I've done it. But
I tortured
changed
the
the car.
dealership,
I
though.
got them another car.
I tortured the dealership for a long time after that because I would
Right.
go back whenever something went wrong with the car,
Right.
if something needed to be replaced, because I thought, you know, growing up in Brooklyn, I'm around boys who know cars inside
Right,
and out.
right.
And they fixed everything. So I would go and say, listen, this piece, come look, see this piece, this, you know,
Right.
give me this piece. And they're like, we're not going to give that to you. What are you going to do, take your car apart? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to fix it. And I remember changing the crank because it was a cranked mover.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And I would have the boys on the block play with my car and
Right.
fix, you know,
Right.
like little pieces of my car and stuff. And the guys in the shop used to go, oh my God, this car must look like a bomb after this
that was cool.
stupid girl is taking this car apart. My car never looked like a bomb. It was still
Right.
a hot car. And I actually gave it away like 20 years. It was 20
Wow.
years old when I gave it away.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, my family opened up in Staten Island in 1927.
Oh,
This is 2023. I'm the last living member of our family still in the car business. So we've had a 96-year run in the business. So, and I tell people, sometimes I put it in a post and I say, listen, I know a little bit about this business. I said, and I know a little bit about Staten Island. We've been here almost 100 years doing business. You know, because a lot of people, they question this and they question that. And I go, listen, you call anybody you want, but I'm going to give you the truth because I know what it means and what you have to do
Yeah.
to stay in the business a long
Yes.
time. That's a whole art.
you also develop relationships with people.
You don't sell, you develop relationships. If you want to sell and then never see them again, that's okay. There are people who do that well. But if a small island like this, where everything is festers, your best move is to make relationships, and possibly during those relationships you will do business. And when you do, you will have less trouble because they know who you are as you know who they are.
It's so funny.
I want to mention two things before we're over. We have enough time?
We are not over.
All right, I have a couple of things I want to mention before we go. Go ahead.
But your incredible music career, your incredible car guru life, which, by the way, I'd love to do a car guru show at CTV. Keep that in your head.
Okay.
I think that would be something interesting. Remember the Car Doctor show? Something
Sure.
along that
well, you
line.
know, when
Like
just
something
keep this
like
in
that.
your head. I know we would have to. It's not wrong to have a cell phone, even if it's a track phone, and have people call up because some of the questions.
Yes.
That's really the key in that type of thing. You know, and I tell people that in my
But
ads.
that would
That's
be a lot
good
of fun.
idea.
It would be a lot of fun. But
I did that telethon with the track phone.
yes.
And of course, I had people.
What you can do is get a Google number now, so you don't even need to get
Good.
that.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that hip. I'm fairly
But we'll
hip.
teach you. I remember-
I'm Uber now. I'm
I
Google.
remember trying to get in
I'm-
touch with you for something, and I'm like, Al, I'll text you, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, that was way back.
Whoa, no texting. I
But,
remember that.
Yeah. Well, I got really good at social media because
Yes.
I had to. You know, you want to stay in business at my age when people think you should be sipping a Mai Tai in Key West, you know, and I don't do that. So I had to get hip with a lot. I don't want to interrupt
No,
your thought.
you've had an outstanding musical career. You've had an outstanding career in the automobile industry. You had a very passionate, heartfelt teaching experience.
Right.
But you've also been involved with so many service organizations. Your whole entire, I don't know if I could
Interesting.
list all of those service organizations.
I have a resume written, and it's a 4-page resume. Now, people throw resumes away if it's more than a page.
Yeah.
So, and Tom Tabersi, Sue Tabersi. Sue started out many years ago. Now she's also a therapist, and they have a resume service, and they've been so good. They always keep mine. I always update it, even though I rarely had to use it. A few times I had to use it for certain other things, even though it wasn't a job. And I have listed all the things. There's about 40 organizations that I listed, but not that I just participated in. These are the ones that gave me awards. Mm-hmm. The ones I participated in, it's probably 200. And over the years, I calculated that I was blessed, and I mean this, to raise about $2 million for Staten Island. But sadly, many remember, and sadly, many don't. So if I gave you a list of these organizations, okay, and you saw, Man of the Year, this and that. By the way, in 1971, I was Institutional Teacher of the Year for the state of New York.
Wow.
For that chorus. So I beat out, 10,000 teachers who had vied. I never even vied for it. My supervisor, unbeknownst to me, submitted my name. I didn't know that. And then she brought me in. She said, you just became Teacher of the Year in 1971 for the state of New York.
Wow.
Yeah. And I put that on the resume and all these other things, So the good news is I was always happy to do that. And the good news is out of the 40, I think, not that you can't in business expect it. If you do this, they're going to do that. There's no quid pro quo. But every once in a while, it's nice to say, Al Broker's asked for us for about 8 or 9 years. I think we should do something. Maybe send somebody to buy a car. A guy could have bad credit, but at least you walk in and say, this guy came from.
Yeah.
But you don't get it. The quid pro quo shouldn't be expected, but neither is it wrong for someone who you do help to every once in a while throw you a bone.
Sure.
I used to tell everybody, look, I'll take the mercy gig. Give me the mercy gig. I don't care. Because I was always very funny about that.
Yeah.
But
well, you have a great sense of humor.
And listen, you got to go with it, roll with it. As they say, take the good and the bad.
I remember seeing.
It's a easy come, easy go. I changed that. Hard come, easy go. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
In one hand, out the other.
Absolutely.
I remember seeing this huge production you put on with one of your service organizations, where I believe it was at Snug Harbor, in the music hall, and it was a huge show. I think it was Rotary.
21 years. When I started the Rotary Chorus, I went to my Rotary Club, and I tell them up front, my board of directors, they were longing to make money. This was probably 26, 25 years ago. I said, look, I don't even want to say this, but I could put you in the show business. Now, show business is 2 words, show business. Without the business, there's no show.
Yeah.
I said, and I will do something for you. I want to start this chorus, and I want to do stuff with it, and I'll make it pay for itself. But if any of you here, you're all business people, and whatever business you do, I don't question. If I hire you as an accountant, you do what you got to do. If I hire you as a priest, you pray like you want. But if I'm going to do a show, I don't need people telling me what to do. It's my business. I'm giving you a service, helping you make money from what I do for my living. Mm-hmm. So in 20 minutes, they all said yes. And that was my rule. Don't break my onions, because I know what I'm doing. This is what I do. Anyway, 21 years. We raised $500,000 with those shows for South Shore Rotary.
And they were a great time. It was a great show.
But I started it in 1996. Actually, I started with a Sinatra-thon. I created something called the Sinatra-thon. Never heard of it. I created it. And I had 20 people singing. $500 you had to give me to sing. And there were other things that you could do. We had spaghetti and meatballs for 6 hours. I had the borough president, congressman, everybody singing. I had business people. And you got a card, like when you run and they give you $10 to run.
Sure.
I gave them a card, $500 card, get $20 to come and see you sing at a place, or $50. And we had 600 people in 6 hours coming in and out of the hall, and a continuous show, and we raised $16,000. That was in 1996. 16,000 today is 35,000. And from there is when I told Rotary I will start the show. So it was really 22 years. But that's when I started the shows.
Everybody had a great time at that show.
Well, it was a feel-good show. It was a feel-good show.
Everybody had a good time.
I never believe in not having a feel-good show. And there were. We did, excerpts from plays and comedy. It was really a ton of fun. And 5 years ago, I was going to give it up, or 6 years ago. It was on the 20th year. And we had a lot of fun. We did a big celebration. Right. And then they said, come on, one more. So I did one more. I went to 21. At 21, I said, I'm done. 28, 29 rehearsals, all that, it was wonderful. But I couldn't do it anymore, In Italian, there's a word basta, enough.
You never know.
Right.
You never know.
So now I'm talking to Karen O'Donnell. I always hired a director of music. I was the music director and the producer, executive producer, but I always hired a director to do the nuances. And then the late Jennifer Straneri, she was with me almost every show I did, every show. I raised about $250,000 before the Rotary shows for Rotary. I had different shows.
And Rotary does really amazing
My Rotary
work.
Club is, to me, the best in the universe. But I want to tell you, in 1986, Phil Straneri and I, we were on the Staten Island Council on the Arts. He said, you got to do something for us. I said, all right. So I created a show called the Hidden Talent Show, meaning doctors, lawyers, business people who really are singers, guitar players.
Ah.
And I did it at the College of Staten Island. We packed the place. And the show we put on with people who were professionals in the business. And the reason I did that is that certain people, if they have a little attitude, a little snobby. Well, I used to be a singer. I used to be a musician. I don't do that anymore, And I used to say, are you kidding me? So I did that to prove that you can be a professional, you can be a lawyer, you can be a heart surgeon.
And still be fun.
And still have fun in your life.
Yes.
And maybe even be good at what you do as an avocation. And that was the reason we did the show, and it made a lot of money.
Oh, listen, I have some great ideas for you. I really think that maybe you should
Where were you when I needed you?
start one of these shows again. I think some people need to get divorced, remarried, all these fun things, whatever.
I used to tell everybody, if you get divorced, I'll do the plane to Reno, because you couldn't get divorced here.
Yep.
Which is what I should have did anyway.
Oh, God, you're too funny. Now, another passion. I mean, you are definitely not an hour guest. You are
I do want to mention two things before.
Yes, like a 10-hour guest because of
Okay.
your life. Another one of your passions happens to be about Father Capodanno.
So many of us know the story, and so many of us know.
But some people may not.
Okay.
Because they may be like me, from
Right, yeah.
another place.
Father Vincent was born on Staten Island, family of 10. He's my cousin. His mom and my grandmother were sisters. But his father and my grandfather came from Italy together, not as relatives.
Okay.
They came on the boat,
Okay.
swam to Brooklyn when they got here, didn't go through,
I'm sorry, what?
swam to Brooklyn,
Okay.
jumped off the boat. So they're on their ledger coming, but they're not on the acceptance.
Oh, so they never made it to Ellis Island. They
No,
just jumped
they
off?
got so excited.
In the
they
middle of
jumped
the
off
harbor?
boat. Yeah.
Oof.
And they swam to Brooklyn. And you had to have a representative, and my grandfather had a step uncle in downtown in Smith Street in Brooklyn. So, P.S. the two friends, Vincent Capodanno and Albert Lambert, wound up 5 years later or 3 years later marrying two sisters. That's how the Capodannos and the Lamberts became.
Oh, okay.
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 Married the two sisters. Long story short, Father Vincent, born the youngest out of 9, always reading the book called The Field Afar from Marinold. It was a little magazine they sent every month. And as he grew in time, he wound up having the calling. He wanted to be a priest, but his mother didn't know. And he woke her up one night when he had already graduated high school, but he took his girlfriend to a prom. And he woke my aunt up 1 o'clock in the morning. He says, Ma, I got something to tell you. She thought he was going to say,
I want to propose.
yeah, and he said, I'm going to become a priest. Well, he did. He wound up Marinold, Taiwan for 6 years, helping Taiwan. It was free China. It was Formosa. It became Taiwan when communist China took over, and free Chinese people who wanted to be free went to Taiwan.
Right. That's
how that all happened. So he was in the jungles. He did many things. After a while, he just felt that he had to do something different. and he volunteered. He spent a little time in Hong Kong, but the big move was to become a chaplain. And he went to school in Fort Hamilton. I used to drive him every day. There was a chaplain school right in Fort Hamilton, behind the park. Anyway,
it's the Army base.
Yeah, at the Army base. So he wound up becoming a chaplain in Vietnam, and he was the kind of chaplain that wanted to be on the battlefield at all times. And he was always, "You can't go on the battlefield, Father. I'm here to help the soldiers, you know. You got to carry a gun." "I'm a priest. I really can't carry a gun, but I can carry a cross and I'll carry the rosary beads." And they had to look the other way because he wasn't supposed to go on the field. So he must have went on 100 times. One day he goes on the field, and he gets on the field, and they said, he didn't go on the field. The helicopter was leaving, and they said, "There's no more room, Father." They did it on purpose. They didn't want him to go. So as the helicopter was moving, he jumped on the back of the helicopter.
Oh.
And there's a picture of him. It's one of the best pictures of him, the last day of his life. And he jumped on that helicopter, and he went on the battlefield, and it was one of the worst battles in Vietnam that had ever existed. And they were outnumbered 10-1. And he kept going from soldier to soldier, bullets flying over his head. And his famous line, and I always screw up the precise quote, "Fear not, soldier, God is with us here today." And try to make the soldiers feel
comfort.
good. He was going from soldier to soldier, and he gets shot, and half of his arm coming off. He wrapped it himself. He wouldn't, they're yelling at him to get off, he wouldn't. He goes to another soldier, he's given last rites, and a Viet Cong comes out, 27 bullets, shoots him with 27 bullets. He throws himself over the soldier, and to save the soldier, or to protect himself. Push comes to shove, we didn't know it. He got the Medal of Honor posthumously, the greatest honor in America, but he had 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, the Navy Cross, hidden in my aunt's attic. We all found that after he died. He got every medal known to mankind, but he wouldn't tell us. Humble. Then he became on the rung for sainthood. It was requested that this man should become a saint, and everybody's for 10 years. He's a servant of God, first rung. And 4 months ago, we get this shocking news that his quest for sainthood is on pause. How am I doing in time?
Oh, you've got time. Don't you worry.
Right. He gets put on pause. We and 10,000 other people were shocked. What does this mean? What do you mean, pause? We find out that the Vatican doesn't really determine. I got interviewed by the Vatican twice. First time for an hour in a hotel that's right on the grounds of Fort Wadsworth. A lot of people don't even know it's there. And the second time in the Father Capodanno Chapel by 3 priests. And they try to trick you. What's the worst thing you could say about Father Capodanno? You can't say anything bad about Father Capodanno. They try to trick you to see if you can uncover something.
The man passed away decades ago. Are they serious with this?
Allegedly, they have to go through this. So, P.S., I'm good. I went the whole routine. At the end, they had cassettes. Believe it or not, this was only 6 or 7 years ago. And it was almost time to go up. I said, "Listen, I'm done with this," I told them. "I'm done with this." And they went, they shut the cassettes off, the 3 priests. And I stood up. I said, "Here's the seal. Here's how I feel. Father Capodanno should be made a saint tomorrow. This is an exercise in," and I didn't say the word, and they said, "Well, Mr. Lambert," 2 of them got up and put their fingers on the desk. I thought I was in the principal's office. And they said, "We feel the same way." So that was good news.
But the third didn't.
Third was the same one who interviewed me a while back, and I think he did, but these were the 2 new ones. So P.S., they put this on pause. We all go crazy. There's a cause for the canonization at the Church of the Immaculate Conception. The Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington is the national church for Catholics. The National Cathedral is the national church for Protestants. In the shrine, they have the Mass there every year in his honor. And there's a Father Capodanno room. So P.S., at this point in time, there's a cause for the canonization of Father Capodanno is a not-for-profit. That's why there's 2 movies about him. I had the pleasure, the privilege of being an MC in 2 of those movies. Called and Chosen, The Grunt Padre was the first one. Called and Chosen and The Field of Far were made recently in the last 8 years, 7 years. The pause, we find out that the Vatican doesn't make the decision. They outsource the decision.
I'm sorry, what? You have 3 minutes.
They outsource the decision. And the people who they outsourced it to don't really do an in-depth study. And they come up with 5 ridiculous reasons. Now, I just wrote almost a thesis, which I'm mailing to the Archbishop Broglio, who is on our side, and to the cause. I wrote a practical thesis on each one of those ridiculous reasons. And Lenore's just almost finishing typing it up, and I'll be sending it out because they wanted information about his life prior. And I just finished this thesis, which will be going out, which allegedly should go to the Vatican, but may not, because I want the people here to determine whether I got a little too emotional or not.
Right.
But I was very factual as to why these reasons were weak and unwarranted. So that's where it is. The pause doesn't mean it's over. Many people who have become saints had a pause.
Okay.
But my thinking was, how do you pause this man? How do you pause this man? It almost makes no sense. So that's where it is.
Insane.
I'm so glad we had this time together.
You have 2 minutes. What else would you love to share with everybody?
I would like to share that I happen to have 2 beautiful children, and I have a stepson who's beautiful. As you know, he transitioned. Mm-hmm. He's a wonderful young man. He's doing great. He'll be married in December to his girlfriend, who's a sweetheart, and we're excited about that.
Congratulations.
I have a daughter who sings her ass off, excuse my French, and
I know
also,
she's got quite a name for herself.
She's got a name. She's an artist, and she's doing very well with her new business, and we're very happy over that. It's always a struggle, don't get me wrong, but
right.
but it's a struggle that's successful. Her singing, again, thank God she still keeps it up. It was Wu-Tang that helped me out. You know, I always salute Raekwon. You know, they really, her and I.
Wu forever.
Him and I were friends and still are, and he used Laura for many, many things, and it was so wonderful.
My grandson was born, it's the bib, the whole outfit, and it was just all Wu.
Wow.
Wu all the way.
Well, I met a couple of the others, but it was Ray that I got real friendly with, through a really good friend of mine, Greg, who was really the guy to put me together. And of course, I have my son, Al, Harvard graduate, brilliant young man, worked in the White House for President Bush. At the age of 29, he winds up in the White House as a lawyer for the president. And now he works for Boeing Aircraft, travels all over the world.
Wow.
And he's a brilliant young man, and not because of me, but he happens to be.
Well, you've done well.
Most of my 2 kids can both sing. Laura especially, and Albert especially, but he was smart enough to say, the hell with it, I'm going to be a lawyer from Harvard. But they were, through my ex-wife, Camille, they were descendants of the famous Giuseppe Verdi, who wrote all those arias.
Yes.
Yeah, Camille's mom was a Verdi. And he had no children, Giuseppe, but his uncle is so my kids got a little of the music from me, but they also had the blood in them from Giuseppe Verdi, which is an amazing heritage that they have musically.
That's wild.
Yeah.
We have just a few more seconds left. And
how could I thank you for this chance for me to explode stupidly
Listen.
and say things that I probably haven't said in a clump in a long time?
Because nobody gets to ask you questions.
Yeah.
You ask everybody all the questions.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you
Your
for
lovely
bringing
daughter.
me here.
Your lovely daughter.
Thank you.
So glad she won.
Thank you for bringing me here all those years ago. I love you, and from being your guest, I'm the Vice President of the Board of Directors here.
How cool is that?
So thanks so much, AlLambert.
Love you
You're a
forever,
legend, and I love you.
And I
Thank
love
you for
family.
watching.